You do a set of glasses and you want them all to be the same, right? So a little trick, if you guys didn't see those videos, is to grab a dry erase marker. Make sure that you test it a little bit at the bottom of your glass. Make sure that alcohol will remove it, because some are more permanent markers and you want to be able to make sure it comes off. So you're just using that as a little guide. You can use like your jar or whatever you have, lay this on here, and then go ahead and spin your glass to get a line. And then once you have your line on your glasses, you're going to do all your glasses, then you'll have the same kind of setup for each glass that'll be, roughly the same height. Okay, so I already did that to save some time. And then I put my tape on, and then I also added another brim of tape right at the very bottom to give me a nice straight line at the bottom. So I'm going to put a different color of glitter at the bottom. Okay. So the best way I like doing the application of paint, again, you're going to get a little bit more durability if you use the enamels white. It's not a problem to use our multi-surface. My sponge is dry and my paint is nice, so I don't need any medium. Okay, so we're just going to apply it with our sponge, give it a nice coverage. With the glitter, you don't really need to put 2 coats, but if you weren't putting glitter, then sometimes you might notice a difference there depending on your application, that you might want to let this dry and put another coat. So like I said, if you see those other videos with the Murano, it's definitely the same thing, guys. It's just how much glitter did I pour on it? Did I give it a really concentrated glitter look or just a sprinkle? Right. So this is just my snowman. I want it to be nice and bright white. And that's what I like about the Murano glass too. They've got a really nice frost. So if you wanted to have a little bit of transparency, there is some pros and cons definitely with the Murano glasses. You can get those really nice thin lines as a border on top. And see this dry spot here in my sponge here, I don't have any paint. That's a great place to come in and tap it down a little bit because it's really raised. So you don't want it to be all speckly, a little bit flat. That's why it's better to put 2 thin coats than a really gloopy, thin, thick coat. Okay, so I'm just getting good coverage. And for the white, I definitely like to use just the sponge. Go back up here, re-wet that paint a little bit. It's starting to dry. You want to work pretty quickly. Okay, everything else is all nice and wet. And then if you have a plan somewhere, try to stay away from that area with your glitter. So I was trying to put maybe a little bit heavier glitter, maybe around the rim here. And then just a very light dusting. Guys, just a very light dusting. And then again, I'm going to be a little bit heavier around my line. And then whatever's left in coming off my fingers. And give it a little tap. And then you want to remove your tape right away because it starts to harden and then it's hard to remove it. Yeah, the paint might peel off with the tape if it's dry. All right, so always put your glasses upside down to pull the tape off just in case it dangles. Where is it going to dangle? It's going to dangle all over your wet paint. So this is where I like to put it upside down so that when I'm pulling off that tape, it's not going to dangle down. And then this gives you a nice crisp line. So after it's dry, then I'll go around with some alcohol and remove that marker. All right, so I'm trying to find my line here where I buckled over. So you can use a little bit of a knife, but just be careful. Last thing I need is to bleed. Okay, so then you can see a really nice line at the bottom as well. Okay, so set that over to the side and let that to dry. Alright, so when it's totally dry, then you can take an old scruffy brush and really rub it to get all the excess off. Okay. And you'll see that a little bit fell off. But I really only lightly dusted this one. Okay, and then what you're going to do is, when it's all nice and dry, is you're going to put a nice coat of Mod Podge over it. Nice thin coat. You shouldn't see any streaks. I love using the white bristled glass brushes. Right. So I like to do this first before I paint on it. And then if you want, you can always put another coat over it all after if you want. Okay, so especially with the drinking glasses, I recommend 2 coats of Mod Podge. So you're going to put one on the glitter to get that glitter to stay. And then you're going to put it over the whole thing before rhinestones. All right, so your rhinestones, if you're going to add any, should always be last. Okay, so I'm just using my flat brush along the line. And then that'll seal and protect the paint a little bit more too. Okay, so let's just quick here. So do it in both directions. Get in the middle. Making sure that I'd have a nice smooth application. If it's not giving you a smooth application, you have too much Mod Podge on your brush. If you have a lot of glitter in your brush, I don't suggest going back into your jar. Just wipe it off on a piece of paper and then just go in again and smooth it out until you're just really wetting it and smoothing it out. I started off with taping up on top of the previously painted white with some electrical tape to create some nice sharp lines. and painted the area with some cobalt blue, and then added my glitter. So you didn't really need to have any tape on the bottom there. I just kind of eyeballed it around the line and then added more glitter to the stem. When we're all done, then let it dry. Then I give it all a nice coat of Mod Podge dishwasher safe sealer and glue to trap all that glitter in there, so then that way it doesn't get all over your hands. And then I can just scoop it all back into my bottle. There's no wasting glitter here. We're going to play around with some sunflowers on these wine glasses. And I wanted to make them a little bit smaller, so I decided to bring out the number 8 round brush to do our strokes. I'm just pulling out from the center with it being wet from the scruffy, so it's pulling out a few darker streaks in with my yellow and yellow ochre, and I added a little bit of white for a few strokes. And I hope you see that we're having a lot of fun here. Some of the strokes don't always go as planned. I'll go over them a little bit more and fix things up, so hopefully you'll see in the process not to panic. And just know that you can go over things again, right? So I'm just putting in a base layer of leaves, and you'll see later that I decide to go over them again. So everything I'm showing you, you're just basically going to be repeating everything 3 times. I did like 3 little brooch style patterns all the way around, spread them around. And then I just hit it with the blow dryer a little bit so that I can add a little bit more and not worry about touching wet paint as I'm working around my glass. I put a little bit of darker shades on the corner of my brush, and I'm just going around the center, adding a little bit more interest with some shading, a little bit more streaky areas. Right, so you can always add more to give it that little extra pop, and then go over it again with a tiny little bit of yellow and white to highlight some edges and fix any edges that maybe got covered by some green leaves by accident. I ended up painting this over a little bit of a glitter, so some areas were a little bit bumpy, and I just wanted to give it a little extra coverage and a little bit more depth, brightness on the edges. So you see me just going through that really quickly, just to perfect anything. And just try to go slow and just tapping it in a little bit at a time just to give it that extra coverage. And throwing in those little veins in. And going around touching up all the rest of my flowers now. I like doing 2 glasses at the same time so you can work a little bit at a time, let it dry, come back to it. And then same with, each of these flowers. So there were 6 of them to do. So by the time you play around with one and come back and add a little bit more, it's all starting to dry and set. And you can start adding a little bit more detail. Adding a bit of dots in there and just trying to get a little textured look going on. If you guys need more help with your stroke work, I'd love to help. Send me a private message on Facebook or email me. I'd love to see your work, and maybe we can meet on Zoom and answer a few questions, or you can jump on my full program. I've got 14 courses plus extra boot camp for advancing and loads of practice sheets that you guys can practice right on top of and learn a lot of these basic strokes. Right? Putting in little fillers, little chisel strokes, tying a little bit of that blue in from the ribbon border into my design and complementing it with the yellow as a nice contrast to brighten things up. And painting on a previously painted surface, like adding the white paint to the glass before I start, makes things a lot better for translucent issues that you might be having with your glass painting, and not have to worry about seeing messy strokes in the back. Inside of your glass helps keep it nice and clean looking and gives you better coverage. Okay, so I hope you like this quick little demo here for you to give you some ideas on some fun projects. And then, of course, we're going to add some crystals. All right, so we got the Mod Podge dishwasher safe that I put in an old gallery glass bottle that was empty. So that way it's easy to just apply a little bit as I need it. It doesn't cross-contaminate the Mod Podge jar, because sometimes when you're covering the glitter, you end up with it on your brush and it'll be in your main jar. So this way it keeps it nice and clean. And I'm just applying a thin coat. That way I can hold the bottom. Definitely important to make sure that you apply a coat just on the blue glitter by itself, and try to be neat about it around that tiny little rim. And then that way, when you go and put your second coat onto the white with your finished design, then you shouldn't get anything transferred over. But I just kind of work my way to the edges up, and then I can flip the glass around and work on the bottom. The thing about the flat brush is that it gives you a nice edge to be able to get a straight line. The mop brush is a little bit rounded on the edge, as much as I like it a little bit softer of a brush, but the white bristles are really nice on those brushes as well. So it's just a nice light flat application, so you're not squeegeeing the product off. You lay your brush a little bit on an angle so that you're just leaving a nice light thin application. And so one coat should be enough, but if you want to cover the glitter just a little bit more and make it a little bit more smoother to the touch, then definitely the more coats you put on, the better. Just nice thin coats, a little at a time. You don't bake this stuff, right? You just let it sit, and unfortunately you do have to wait the 30 days for the Mod Podge to completely cure, and then you'll be able to set it in the top shelf of your dishwasher and be able to wash it like any other glass. I do still recommend hand wash for the most longevity, and in case of the crystals, you just want to protect them a little bit and not have them clang on anything and accidentally knock it off. And then when you're finally happy with the seal everywhere, then we can definitely let this dry and then go and apply some crystals. Alright, I got all my little crystals there on a plate, and I'm just using the back of the liner brush. It's a nice and skinny brush, and some tacky putty. It's great stuff there if you want to put a picture on the wall. Maybe you got grandkids or kids that are doing art for you, and you can definitely, without putting any damage on your wall, you can use this little putty to stick things on and detack it. And it's just that right amount of tackiness that will stick onto the top of the gem, and as soon as it touches the wet glue, Mod Podge is what I used, and it will release. Just take your time. I got it on fast forward here for you guys so that you don't have to watch me do all of these gems, and basically I'm doing it in about 2 minutes instead of probably 20. Right, so yeah, you guys get the gist of that, and try not to put too much of the Mod Podge on there, because if it's too wet, then you might have a hard time getting the crystal to release, and then you'll see maybe that I did put too much of the Mod Podge, then it almost swims in it, and then it's going to make your crystal look dull. So try not to put it too thick, right? I use the nozzle to kind of move it around very, very lightly, so I'm not applying too much, and using the nozzle to guide it, right? So then that way it's not like a big application. Right, so if you do accidentally get a little bit too much glue on your putty, then just clean it off and dry it up again, and then it'll pick up the crystals no problem. So I'm just kind of looking at it on up right there and kind of doing a quick check to see if everything is kind of lined up straight, and kind of, I just eyeballed it to have them about, roughly the same amount of space in between each crystal. With the crystals, I let it dry overnight. Alrighty. They're all done. Alright, so just a little recap here. Remember that you're going to put the Mod Podge on top of your white glitter. And then when you apply your blue paint and your blue glitter, you're going to let that dry. You're going to put another coat of Mod Podge only on these two areas. Alright? Then the glitters will be sealed. Then when you do a whole coat of Mod Podge over the whole thing, your blue glitter shouldn't transfer onto your white. So you really do got to keep these separate so that they don't mix with each other. Alright, cause you trouble. So yeah, this is probably the biggest trick of getting your two-tone glitter wine glasses done. A variety of lightly dusted glitter on the white, so it's easier to paint on, and then really heavy coat of glitter on the blue. Alright, so this will be a little bit more bumpier, and that's fine too, as long as it's coated in. You could put 2 coats of Mod Podge on top of the blue glitter to help it be maybe a little less bumpy. So it'll still all be nice and durable, and still, no matter what, I still recommend people to hand wash. Like if people wanted to get lazy and put their dishes in the water to soak for 20 minutes or whatever, I can't guarantee that, anything's going to happen. But the dishwasher safe Mod Podge, right, does claim that it is dishwasher safe, right, top rack, and you'll be able to wash it. Completely cures in 28 days, right, before you can wash it on the top rack. And then if you do use it before that, then maybe lightly hand wash it. And while it's wet, it says, while it's wet, place the design onto the surface. Wait 2 hours between coats. Well, they're talking about when you're doing decoupage. You're putting napkins on. So you're going to apply the napkin to the surface that you're going to want a dishwasher safe. Right, so maybe you wanted to put a little bit of napkin on here as well in your painting. You paint it white, put your napkin on, and then you would seal it, and then you'd be able to drink with it. And it's going to be a little bit hard with a round surface, making sure that you have no creases in your napkin. But that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother class on decoupage. But we're using this dishwasher safe version, gloss, water base, glue, sealer, and finish, right? So when it says glue, then this is where I'm like, okay, these rhinestones shouldn't go anywhere. But I won't be going scratching on this and doing anything heavy with it until 28 days. So, we'll play with it. I always like testing all of my stuff and be really rough with it. This is only 24 hours after I put the coat on, and it's all really, really durable. Like, I don't want to force anything because we did put this on pretty thick in the application. And you don't really want to put another coat on top of your crystals because you'll dull them. right? You want to see all those little cuts of glass and all the little prisms of your crystals. And as soon as you put a coat of your sealer on top of them, they're going to just look like bubbles, like glass bubbles. So the brilliance is going to be taken away from your crystals. So make sure that this is the last thing that you do is put your crystals on. Right, and then try not to bury them with glue on them. If in the process of putting them on, and if you notice that you got glue on them, then I would just get rid of that crystal and put a fresh one on. Like, I hope you've seen that I had a couple of them there that I was playing with, and I didn't like them. I just knocked them off and got another one, right? So yeah, that's basically our fun that we had with our glasses there. I hope that you will tag me on Facebook and show me your glasses. Maybe you choose to put some roses on there. Maybe you put whatever your favorite colors are and whatever your favorite flowers are, but play with them and see how you like the difference between painting on glass and painting on paint. All right, you'll see that it turns out a lot nicer and it's a lot cleaner. Right, you barely see any of the strokes there, and that's because I wasn't very heavy-handed with my white too. If I would have put two coats of white, and then put the glitter on the second coat, then definitely it would be a lot more opaque. But then also notice that your little blue from your stem is also popping up too. So you want to make sure that that line is really nice and neat. Mine could have been a little bit better, but definitely it's still beautiful to use and enjoy and fill it up with your favorite beverage.